Right. Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Spirit of Healing Academy. I am Reverend Michelle Scrimger Brown. It's my pleasure to welcome you all here this beautiful, sunny Sunday morning. I'm here in my offices at Spirited Healing. And at this gathering, we are an assembly of people who will teach each other to find the miracle of joyful living from life circumstance to accomplish that which seems impossible. And our intention with these gatherings is to stimulate thought, create connection, and expand consciousness. That all sounds so magical. But really what we do is we talk and we explore topics that maybe challenge us. We explore spiritual concepts that maybe inspire us. And we all are invited to share freely our thoughts and opinions in this gathering. This Sunday, we are going to continue our discussion that we started last week because it was such an involved conversation about how to be a better ally. I know quite a few of you were here last Sunday. I know, Nikki, you said you missed it, but you've had a chance to watch the playback. So that's wonderful. And unlike last week, we are going to stick to the format and we're going to start with our opening intention. So let me just quickly share my screen so that we can all say that together. I think you're all muted now, but if you're not, just take a moment to please mute yourself. May I come to understand that blessings are everywhere, that my attitude will affect outcomes, that challenges are often gifts in disguise. May I come to trust that most things can get better with time, that my instincts and gut feelings have value, that a positive attitude makes things go smoother. May I come to see that I have many skills and talents I can use, that I am a positive influence on many people, that there are those around me who wish me well. May I come to value that today is a blessing to be enjoyed, that each person is unique and important, and that each moment of my life has meaning. Do you know, I just realized that I say this differently. That last line there in the third stanza, that there are those who wish me well, but I always say those around me. Well, there you go. I think the intention rings true regardless. So last week we delved into a pretty meaty topic. Before we get into the conversation again today, does anyone have any experiences or notions that came to them as a result of our discussion last week? You guys been thinking on it? Anything you want to share?
I had a moment where I was very aware of what I was saying for the rest of the week, but I had a moment where someone shared something good with me. And my first instinct was to say, I'm so happy for you. And then I thought, why am I making it about me? Why do my feelings on
Wow.
this matter that is happening to someone else? Why was that my first thing out of my mouth? So I'm really trying to retrain
Right.
what I'm saying and also how I'm feeling. I'm just very conscious.
That's really interesting. You know, I never would have thought about the whole ring theory in relation to positive responses. But you're right, like that for sure goes both ways, doesn't it?
I don't know about that. I mean, that's one I've been grappling with because I don't want to stifle who I am and stifle what I'm feeling. If I'm having happy feelings for someone, I don't think I have to can that, shut it down. Yeah. Anyway,
Well,
I wouldn't say
No.
whatever I'm feeling is that I'm making it about me.
So I
That
know,
was
so I'm also wearing a lens of, I'm also an educator. I work with kindergarten students. And one of the things I'm trying to do is when I'm proud of something they do, instead of saying, I'm so proud of you, you know, wrote all your letters, to reflect on how they feel first.
yes,
Um,
for
so
sure.
just wearing a bunch of lenses and hats and again, just being aware of, does it have to be about me first?
I do think it's important that people are invited to feel internal before there is external influence. And I wouldn't necessarily think about how I had to couch even my positive emotions, like keep them away from people. I think I could really share in my happiness with the person who I'm celebrating with. But I think the key from what you just remarked, Jennifer, was that I would not say, I am happy for you. Maybe I would say, you must be so happy. I am so glad you are so happy. What do you think about that, Annie? Like, we still have our emotions and
Yeah.
our reactions, but we're not. I've become really alert to how important it is. Certainly working with children, and in the work I do, to help people orient themselves to their internal feelings.
Certainly. Yes, I agree there. That is important.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I agree too, Jennifer, with what you were saying, like especially when you mentioned working with children and a positive reinforcement rather than saying, I'm so proud of you. Like that's one that's really stuck with me for the last. People say, oh, you must feel so proud of them. And I think, wait a minute, it had nothing to do with me. I don't take pride in someone else's work. I'm happy for them. Anyway.
I remember somebody said that to me once, that she was so offended when people would say, I'm so proud of you. And that was such a game-changing moment for me. I thought, really? Like, I've been centering my whole life waiting to hear one person say, I'm proud of you. And of course, then I realized, like, that's the impact of trauma. And we're really supposed to be feeling proud about ourselves.
Mm.
You know, you must be so proud of the work you've done. You inspire me is maybe more the kind of thing that I would say now.
I like that better. You know what? Saying that pride thing sticks with me because it's like reinforced from childhood, the 7 deadly sins, right? The pride
Oh.
is one of those. So
Right.
yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Very interesting. Does anybody have anything else they want to add before we rejoin the conversation from last week? No? All right. So what I'm going to do then is go back to sharing the screen, and I'm going to go back to sharing the Instagram post that we were looking at. Theoretically. We're going to have to flip through a few things. Oh, sugar pops. Okay, hang on. I have to stop the share. Thanks everybody for your patience. There we go. All right, now I can get there. Don't you love how I didn't swear? It's almost like I'm a grown-up. I said sugar pops. Like, what the hell was that?
Cute.
There. Here we go.
Did good job.
So last week we spent some time looking at this post from Indigenous Motherhood. I don't know if anybody wound up following them on social media as a result of this conversation. But if you haven't, I would encourage you to do so. They're on Facebook and Instagram if you do social media. So we started looking at this, and we looked at the first toxic ally, the guilt-driven ally. I'll just quickly read over it. A guilt-driven ally will be an ally solely because of the personal guilt they carry, because of the actions of those in their bloodlines. This form of allyship comes from the avoidance of their own guilt. It is inauthentic and can show up as constantly apologizing, along with obsessively stating that they are heartbroken or deeply saddened. The expectation is for Indigenous peoples to recognize their allyship in some way in order to minimize their own guilt. I know we spent a lot of time talking about this one last week, and I'm sure it will come up again. Number 2, we talked about this one as well, the performative ally. The performative ally will be an ally solely for personal or commercial gain. This form of allyship comes from the avoidance of their own unworthiness. It is inauthentic and can show up as only being an ally when they need to, for social media followers, for monetary and social gain, and more. It can also look like big companies and politicians being an ally for more awareness about themselves, rather than more awareness about true social issues. We see a lot of that in June around Pride Month. And now this is a new one. We didn't really get a chance to talk about this one last week. So toxic ally number 3, the one-time only ally. The one-time only ally will be an ally for one moment in time in order to be viewed a certain way by others, and then fall back to their non-ally racist ways once they are out of the spotlight. This form of allyship comes from the avoidance of their own shame and personal deficits. It is inauthentic and can show up as being committed to National Indigenous Peoples Day in the office, and then the next day spewing racist rhetoric about their bros to their bros at a pub. I often see this one, the way that I often express this one is how you show up as an ally is not only how you are with me, it's how you are when I'm not there. Right? Like if we were in a group in a social setting and someone made some comment that was derogatory to trans people, most people in the group would turn to me to shut it down. And if you were an ally, you would step up and start to shut it down. And if you were a true ally, if I wasn't in the group and someone started speaking derogatively, whatever the word is, badly about trans people, you would, without me being there to watch you, jump into the fray and correct the perspective. And this is really hard for a lot of white people, specifically white people. And in large part because of something you touched on a minute ago, Annie, when you were talking about the 7 deadly sins. White people are trained hardcore to be polite. We are trained, especially white women, to be quiet. And so when something happens in front of us and we're like, well, I certainly don't agree with that position, our response is not to say that. Generally, it's to walk away or to unfollow them or unfriend them. It's something super passive. We just withdraw. And that is not allyship. Anybody having any thoughts on this?
I think you're right, Michelle, about us being, I don't know,
Programmed?
programmed, that's a good word, to be non-confrontational. Because for me, sometimes I want to start screaming and yelling my head off. And I have trained myself very obediently to shut my mouth and walk away. And I've gotten that from my own mother when in my own home with my husband, when I've said something to him that I don't agree with what he's saying. And my mother has criticized me in my own home. And I've had to bite my tongue. And then when she leaves, it spews out of me about, like, being obedient and doing what I'm told, that thing, like not speaking out. You have to be polite no matter what. Like somebody can be murdered in front of you and it's like you have to shut up about it. Like it's enraged me my whole life.
Where are your manners that you would speak so loudly? Right?
Yeah.
Like that it's completely a message of the colonial culture that we just have to be quiet.
Who are you to rock the boat?
And we call it respect too, right? We have to respect our elders. Oh, well, he's just old. Of course, he thinks that gay people are wrong.
Oh, yeah.
But I read once, and it came early in the days of my estrangement from my father. I saw this that said, sure, it said it in a nutshell. Sure, he's old and can't update his views, but he learned how to use a cell phone and then he learned how to use a smartphone, and he learned how to download apps and create things. And like, if he can update to technology, he can update his fucking language. Yeah, exactly, Jen. Exactly. Exactly. It's what we push people towards. And this is why this part of this number 3 is such a toxic form of allyship. Because if we're not saying anything, no one around them is challenging them to grow. No one around them is challenging them to grow. Anybody have anything else they want to say about this one?
I think it's a case of, I heard a quote years ago that said, the true measure, of course, in this world, it's the true measure of a man, but let's
Yeah.
say the true measure of human being is, what do they do when no one is looking?
Yes.
How do they behave when no one is looking? How do they act when no one is looking? So it's like, what do they do behind closed doors? That's the true measure.
Yeah.
So then this kind of speaks to that a true ally, well, nowadays I've come to the conclusion with the last year that a true ally needs to shut up, listen, and then do something.
Well, I
That's
think
pro.
sometimes
That's
it's
pro.
true.
That's pro for the people who are suffering.
I think sometimes we have to be quiet, but sometimes we have to talk.
Oh, sorry. I meant not putting our 2 cents worth in.
But here's
just
the thing. Go ahead, Nancy.
Sorry. I have a tendency, because I'm not around a lot of people. I live an isolated life and have done most of my life. And so I don't have a lot of friends. I don't have a lot of people in my life that I'm hearing their stories day by day, that I can then, go join a discussion. It's always me, I've noticed. Like, I'm really frustrated the last year. It's always me. So that circle thing last week, I didn't honestly get it when you described it. I went to the Indigenous Motherhood and started following her, and I read it, and then it clicked in my brain, and you posted something that then I could understand it, but it took me a good week. What's my damn point? My point is, I always speak from my experience, because I just don't have a lot of other people's stories in my brain to relate to what's going on. And
the
I've
truth of
lost
the matter, Nancy, is that most people only ever speak from their experience.
Yeah, but I realize it's like I'm doing the I. And in the allyship, it's like you said, in the circle, the person, so the Indigenous community, the Black people, the LGBTQ community, they are the center of the circle. So it should be them getting not getting to, it's their friggin' time, and should have never had to even come to that it was their time. But that's why I'm saying shut up.
I got you.
And listen.
So let me give an example of what I mean when I say it's not always time for us to be quiet. When things were at the height of the Black Lives Matter movement last May and June, I have a lot of connections on Facebook, and someone had, I think they posted it on a Black woman's wall who, I wouldn't say we're friends, but I know her through networking. Like, we are certainly acquainted. Every time I'm with her, I can't help but smile. She is a beautiful soul, and she is Black. And a white person the end of May, beginning of June, when the fatigue was high for the emotional labor of Black people because of the Black Lives Movement, a white woman had posted on that colleague's wall, that acquaintance's wall, this post explaining why all lives matter was the right thing to say. And when she posted it, she said, "Oh, the minute I saw this, I thought of you, and I just can't wait to sit back and hear what you have to say to this guy." So obviously that's a problem, because we're asking for emotional labor from already a group who is exhausted from the emotional labor they're having to do. And it's another problem because this white person who considers themselves an ally knew it was wrong. And instead of saying to the person it was wrong, she was asking the emotionally expended person to jump in and continue defending herself. So as an ally, I just quickly commented saying it's really inappropriate that you would ask her to do this. If you know it's wrong, it's your response to say this is wrong and why. That's allyship. And I know that for sure because that woman messaged me right away and she said, "Thank you so much for standing up and defending me. You have no idea how exhausted I am." And then a few minutes later, another Black woman who I know through networking messaged me to say, "That was the best move ever. Thank you so much for making it." And messages like that kept coming in from a simple little statement of, "Hey, yo, this is not appropriate. You know why this is wrong. You say it's wrong." So I would say, I wish it was a simple answer, Nancy, about whether or not we need to be quiet all the time or when we
Well,
need to be quiet, because it's not.
no,
Sadly.
but the Black woman who posted something last year, there was not the Black woman, there was a Black woman who, when you had posted something, Michelle, and I followed the link to the woman's site, and her thing said she didn't want any comments from white people.
Yes.
And I brought up short and I hit the emoji, which I've come to feel emojis are useless because they're belittling, I feel. So I've actually, whatever, but that anyway. So the Black woman, I thought, okay, she doesn't want any comments from white people. And then I sat there and I went, yeah, she, why, like, I understand, I get why she said that and everything. So that's why I started going, don't put your 2 cents in, shut up, Nancy. It's
Right.
like, they don't need your opinion, especially if you're not in that group that's suffering.
Definitely. They just don't want your opinion. That's for sure.
So that's why I say shut up. But I
Whoever
see what
you're
you're
being
saying.
an ally to doesn't just want to hear your opinion. They want to see what you're doing. What are your boots on the ground doing to make their lives better?
That's why I said shut up, listen, and do something. But
Yeah. Okay, let's look at toxic ally number 4. The romanticizing ally. This does not sound toxic. It sounds romantic, like Harlequin romance. The romanticizing ally will take every opportunity to talk about how they are an ally, while also stating romanticized toxic ideologies about Indigenous people. This form of allyship comes from an avoidance of their own not being good enough. It is inauthentic and can show up as the ally who commits to being an ally, but shares constant stories of being in ceremony, visions, and their medicine training that they took. They often wear Hollywood versions of Indigenous clothing. This toxic allyship one, I feel, is particularly insidious because we don't even always know it's happening. Nikki, you're having so many facial reactions. I feel like you've got something to say. We definitely want to hear your voice. If you want to speak. I know this happens all the time. I know. Go ahead, tell me.
I'm sorry. Okay. I love you all. I really do. And I can actually feel free to say a lot of things that I think.
Yes.
I appreciate the forum that is here so that I can be authentic.
Yes.
Right. And I think that's important for a lot of people.
Yes.
When I finally watched, yesterday, and I watched the rest of it today, I literally did this when I saw a couple of things. At the very end, you showed the summary.
Right.
And I just.
Because you don't agree with it?
I've experienced a lot of it.
Right. Because it's so true to you. Right.
And I have, okay.
If it becomes too much and you don't want to speak, you know you can stop at any time.
I know
You're
it's,
loving it. Okay.
I'm so cognizant of everybody's feelings because I know what it feels like for people not sometimes to be cognizant of mine.
Right.
So I use a laugh sometimes when it gets too much of emotions. So I do apologize if I start laughing because it's just too much and I don't know how to do it. So I break the energy that's in my mind. It's just a reactionary method. And I do apologize. It means nothing in a way. I have met people throughout my life. And but by the way, I was the stolen child. So I was stolen. And I was raised by a white family. So I was stolen.
Right.
And in my birth mother's reserve, when they went to deliver in the town, still within the last 10 years, babies were stolen
Right.
while the mother was sleeping.
Oh, no.
My family. So it still happens. And you think, oh, it happened back in 1997 was the last. No, it's just a different form. So whenever they know all the CAS and it's called DILCO now, which is another, they had to make something called DILCO, which is the native equivalent to CAS. So they had to formulate something. Because CAS would just start going on to reserve, and we had to get the RCMP police to escort them out.
Right.
Every time they know. So many stories of my uncles and aunts and my mother and father and residential schools, and you don't want to hear any of them. So you just don't.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to hear them.
Yeah.
It's pretty horrific.
Yeah.
So for example, my mother now, my birth mother, and this was given to me when I was in my early 20s. She can't have any dental work without being put out, for example, because of what happened. No anesthetics. So many stories of the reasons why. So I've had people for the last 2 weeks come up to me and say a lot of things that are not really allyship. And it's okay, because I also come from a place where I know that there's love behind it. So I accept it anyway. Right? And so I think that is important as well. So this last little bit of the romanticized. So many people that I have met, like, oh, I want to wear a headdress. I'm going, you don't understand. You have
That's a problem.
You don't know.
Oh my God.
You don't know what it takes to receive a feather.
Right. Never mind enough to make a whole headdress. Yeah.
Yeah. I received one and I end up giving it away. Because I was told from behind me that I needed to give it away. when something happened. So many parts of my culture that I found that I've experienced also since my late teens when I found Anishinaabe Health. So I walked 2 walks. And my mother and my father, my adopted parents, they're walking with me.
Beautiful.
And even them both were crying and said, I had no clue that you were stolen. And they cried
Yeah.
because they felt bad. So when I hear people say, oh, the children and your children, and I'm thinking, thank you. Because I know their heart. And I think that's important. And Nancy, I just love you so much because your heart is so big. So anything you say to me, I'm just going to accept this love.
Okay. I love you too, Nikki.
No matter what. So I've had Germans come up to me and say, what's your nationality? And we've always had, you and I have had this conversation. I think I've said it online in certain times. It's like, I'm from Canada.
Right.
No, really, where are you from? Canada.
I was actually here
No,
first.
you're we're before, and your mother's father and father and father and grandfather and all this from Canada.
Yeah.
And then it finally comes to pass, and usually a friend goes, she's native, she's indigenous, and they go, oh, I know a guy named Fred, do you know him? And I was like, no, I don't. But thank you. And Germans go, we love natives because that's the romanticized way.
Right.
And I just love them anyway. Maybe I'm different. Maybe I am.
Which is pretty lovely of you to
You know?
extend such grace. I just want to acknowledge that. That's extraordinary.
Thank you. My sister, my birth sister, we had this discussion when things happened, when they found the first. And I said, I just put one small caption. I think it was on yours, Michelle, of what if we dug all of them?
Right.
Because we already knew.
Of course.
We already knew.
Yes. This is not a discovering. This is an uncovering.
So when we talked about it, and then I talked to my uncle, what we want is, we never talked about it. We just didn't. We had our own healing to do.
Yeah.
I'm talking about we as a collective we, because I don't have my sister here, and I do apologize if I'm speaking out of turn for her. That they just don't want to talk about it. But now it's in the forefront again.
Okay.
So just give space to heal.
Yeah.
That's all. So we recognize what's going on. We know that there's so much more to uncover. We know all the stories that have been passed down. And a lot has not been passed down.
Yes.
Just space to heal.
God bless.
And I think that's what, yeah. Thank
And
you.
lay tobacco down if you can.
What's that?
And lay some tobacco down if you can. I don't know if anybody knows how to do that. if you want to, I can show you sometime.
That would be a wonderful thing, Nikki. Thank you. We will
We
definitely
can,
make that happen.
we can do that. You and I, Michelle, have done sage
Huge.
together.
Yeah.
So we can do all 4 sacred medicines if you'd like to one day. And we can have it on any time that you want to.
That would be
And
wonderful.
show everyone.
Absolutely. We will book that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think in part, Nancy, that's what you were talking about when you said we need to shut up, right? So that there can be space for Nikki and all Indigenous people to heal.
Yes, and also, Nikki, I want to apologize for about a year ago at one of our meetings in person. When you said something about the Indigenous experience, and it came up in our meeting, and I said something about thank you for teaching me, Nikki, and you got a funny look on your face. And what I've now learned in the last year is it's not your responsibility, it's not Black people's responsibility, it's not the LGBTQ plus community's responsibility to teach me. It is my responsibility to teach myself and learn and absorb the stories. So I've been listening to the stories, little videos and things like that, and reading.
That's
and just
amazing.
hearing what is said. Because just one thing, I listened to a gentleman the other day on CBC, an Indigenous man. I know his name, but I won't use it publicly without his permission. But he said that reconciliation goes in one ear and out the other. It doesn't mean anything. And that brought me up short because I thought, wow. He described other things, being in the residential school, etc. And it was just, if you just sit there and just absorb the person, you get their energy. You feel, if you just sit and absorb, I've learned that's the best thing to do. Getting out of my own way and listening to what is said and feeling what the words they aren't saying are saying. So anyway, I'm sorry that I said that thing about thank you for teaching me, because it's not your responsibility, it's my responsibility.
No,
I think when teaching is offered, it's important to accept it.
Yeah, but it's not the responsibility of others. It is my
We can certainly be
responsibility.
grateful for the moments when we are taught.
Yeah, but I just felt it was a moment when I hurt Nikki, and it's bothered me. That's all.
Okay.
but you didn't hurt me at all.
Well, and see, now it's back to it's about me. So that's the thing I'm battling with. Anyway, love you.
But this is a perfect segue to what I wanted to perhaps wrap up this conversation on allyship around. The first key to learning to be a better ally is to get used to being uncomfortable. That's the bottom line, to get used to being uncomfortable. Because we're going to say things, we're going to hear things, we're going to do things that we're going to decide are wrong or right or inaccurate or whatever. And we just have to get used to being uncomfortable, which we're not trained to as a society. So that's your biggest first task: get used to being uncomfortable. Get used to it.
I hope I didn't hurt anyone.
God, no. I think everybody on this call is really grateful that you shared.
Absolutely.
And maybe I'm speaking out of turn, but I think everybody is really grateful to have held space for you, like to have created a space where you felt you could share, for starters.
Always.
And to bear witness. Thank you.
Thank you.
Teaching us.
I
the second-
learned here.
Sorry?
I learned so much here. So
Oh, well, that's wonderful. The second thing that I noted down that we need to get used to is kind of an easy thing for me, because it's one of the cores of my faith, which you guys have heard me talk about a lot, We have to get used to the fact that there are no absolutes. There are none. Some people are going to want you to talk. Some people are going to want you to listen. Some people are going to want you to defend them. Some people are going to want you to get out of the way so they can defend themselves. See point number one, we have to get used to being uncomfortable because we're going to get it wrong. And that is not a bad thing. The bad thing is not trying. The bad thing is doing things so that we remain comfortable. Our job here is to try and to know that we're doing our best and that there is absolutely no absolute right way to do this. Okay? It's really important. It's really important. And the next thing that I noted down, Nancy, you're going to love this one, was we have to learn to listen, to just receive, to not create a response. Like, I don't know about everybody on this call, but after Nikki finished speaking, I really was like choking on my blood from biting my tongue to not say thank you. But part of being an ally is to not create something that's going to make her respond to me. She's opened up her heart. She allowed herself to be very vulnerable and shared some things that in the more than 10 years I've known you, I have never heard before. My job is just to listen, to receive. I wrote here, there is no response needed other than perhaps encouragement and love. And the last thing that I noted was that we need to, and this again links right back to point number one, being uncomfortable. We need to learn to share what we have learned in defense of the people who are on the inner rings. So kind of like that example I shared earlier where that post was made and I jumped in and said, hey, not cool to ask her. If you know why this is wrong, you should say why it's wrong. Or you jump into other conversations and say, actually, science says trans people are biologically correct. Or you jump in on a thread and say, no, there are 100% going to be more people that we found buried in unmarked graves because we've only now explored, 7 schools of 139? Like 100%, there are going to be more.
Yeah, last I heard there were 150 schools. The last I, yeah.
See, there's not even an accurate number of how many there are. That's how deep this cover up goes.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Nikki. What do you want to say?
I have to confirm that another school is still running, but if you just let me confirm that.
I saw that actually. Somebody shared something earlier that there was one still running. And I thought, holy fucking God.
It's in BC, but I'll confirm that. I'll call the guy.
Yeah, there are, and the scoop is still happening. Like there are actually laws on the book in Manitoba that say if an Indigenous woman has a baby, you got to take that baby away. Literally, that's the law. And then they had finally started repealing it. Then COVID hit and they were like, oh, well, we need some time. Like, time to do what?
Oh.
So we're allowed to be angry about this stuff as white people, as allies. In fact, we have to be, because we're the only ones the government is going to listen to.
It's a very layered subject. If we call it a subject, it's a very layered life.
Yeah.
Yes.
For my birth families, it's a very layered. So much. So I can't speak so many rabbit holes.
Of course.
Okay. But we're talking about specifically this subject. And yeah, there's a lot of stories around just this subject that I do know of my family.
And I don't have any illusions that it's going to go away tomorrow. Right? Because as many layers as there are, that's more layers of uncovering that maybe we'll get lucky enough to see. Jen, were you going to say something? It looked like maybe.
I was gonna say it cannot go away tomorrow. You cannot say we canceled Canada Day and we did our part. It has to keep going. The momentum has to keep going.
Yeah. I would agree.
Every time there is a bodies found, it has to be breaking news. We have to continue talking about it. We cannot become desensitized.
And you're saying this, Jen, just to confirm, as someone whose grandfather is First Nations, yes?
Like
Yeah.
my dad's dad was First Nation.
Yeah.
And because I didn't have a connection to the family because they were so
Hidden. Shame.
they were that the family was inflicted with drug and alcohol abuse. So when my parents got divorced, I lost contact with that side, and my dad and grandfather had passed, and we've dug for information. I would really like to get connected to my roots. If yet to find any information, but so I speak as a colonizer, and I feel as a person whose family has the Indian was erased from him, and my heritage has been stolen from me.
Yeah.
So yeah. And it wasn't until I didn't want this to be about me. So on my Facebook page and my community of sharing with people, I didn't want it to be about me. And it wasn't until I did share that someone who was giving a lot of pushback finally said, oh, okay. And I think it was, oh, I know someone now that has been affected their life. Anyways,
Yeah.
I didn't want it to be about me.
Wow. I think that's part of the uncomfort, right? Yeah. And thank you for sharing. Friends, I think this is a beautiful moment for us to share our affirmation of hope, to end in a place of peace. Nikki, did you want to, or Nancy, did you want to say something? I see you're unmuted again.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just saying, I read a statistic today that 4% of Indigenous women make up 4% of the population, and they have a 16% murder rate, which
Yeah.
when I read that, I went, holy,
Yeah.
that was just, shocking, and everything. And I thought, anyway, and also this is a multi-generational, I feel, multi-generational that goes on and on and on, because it goes back obviously to hundreds of years ago before the white people showed up to this continent.
It's true.
So it's,
But let's end in hope.
yes.
I'm going to make sure that everybody is muted, and I'm going to share my screen so that we can share our affirmation of hope. Hope, fragile, luminous, and buoyant, fill me now. Bring your gifts of optimism, faith, and positivity. Grow strong within me today and every day. Increase my connection with those around me. Balance my moods with a lightness of being and touch all those I meet with blessings. Hope, Fragile, luminous, and buoyant, fill me now. Humble and expand my heart with openness, making me compassionate, relaxed, and kind, aware of the many blessings I have each day, making of me a better, more human person. Hope is a gift that passes through me to others. And so it is. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for working on becoming better allies to the human race. Thank you for sharing your stories and your lived experiences, for making this a more concrete discussion instead of abstract. Thank you for willing to be uncomfortable. Thank you for trying to practice that there are no absolutes. I love you all. I hope you have a wonderful week.
Love you all.
Mhm.
And thank you for sharing as freely as you have.
Bye.